afternoon, at least on South African time. Really delighted to be here. It's very stressful because they send you the summary of who's going to be in the room. And then there are CEOs in here, there are finance experts, there are techies, it's the full ambit. And I was like, oh my God, this is intimidating. And we're talking about one of the most impossible to pin down concepts in discussion in tech today, which is AI. Because I think if I passed at least one of my 2 microphones around the room and asked you to tell me what AI is to you, I would have as many answers as there are people. So I'm going to try to keep it conversational. And in trying to explain why I believe the African experience is integral to what the AI moment is, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me. I'm Zimbabwean born, raised, and loved. Oh, are you also Yay. My mom still lives there, and I call Harare home. My first run through my career, I'm a chartered accountant. So I trained in a time when in Zimbabwe, to do your articles, you could actually do them straight out of high school. So I finished high school, and I started working for Deloitte in Harare. And how that worked is you joined the workplace and you studied your degree by correspondence. So by day you go to clients, by night you study, and somewhere in between you write exams, and you get the first 3 years of your articles are your undergrad, and then the 4th year is your honors degree, and then the 5th year is your board exams. So that means you start working at 19, and by the time you're 25, you're a chartered accountant. You start working at 19. I think by the time I was 21, 22, I was leading teams. By the time I'm 25, I'm a CA. By the time I'm like 26, I'm working for Deloitte out of the New York office, and I'm leading audits that are kind of somewhere in London, Hong Kong, New York, at the same time. Accounting is what I call my first language in business. If Shona is my first language in communication, accounting is my first language in business, where you go from client to client to client and you try to understand what makes a business work. Are there any finance people in the room? Show of hands. Family, yes, okay. So when you're working in audit, you go from one client to the next, and you understand what makes a business tick, right? So one of my clients was Triangle Limited, which grows sugarcane, and then mills the sugarcane into sugar, sells the sugar on global markets, converts the byproduct of molasses, and trades molasses, right? So I can tell you how to value the roots of sugarcane. And then on another client, I'm not at a farm, I'll be at a hotel, Victoria Falls Hotel. Victoria Falls is a very pretty place, one of my favorite places in the world. And there I'm trying to understand, how does a hospitality business make money? How does it value? How does it keep its occupancy levels high? How does it make a profit? So you essentially get into these places and you get to be nosy when you're an auditor, because it's their job to answer your questions. So if you're curious, this is the ticket. But after about a 10-year career in accounting and auditing, which spans 5 years Harare, 5 years in New York, and then about 6 months in Dar es Salaam, I think at about the 8-year mark, I started to get fidgety. And it was essentially this thing that, as an accountant and an auditor, while I had a fluency around what makes a business work, and then if it works, what makes a business profitable, I wasn't involved in creating. Other people came up with the Vic Falls Hotel. Someone else came up with Triangle Limited. And my job is to then come here and be like, how did it go? You know, did you guys record your expenses correctly? But I wasn't the one deciding what expenses make what revenue, create what profitability. And so I started talking to everybody who cared to hear about how I needed a change. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm very good at articulating what I don't like. It tends to take me long to figure out what I do want. So I knew I didn't want accounting anymore, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And so what I did from there was just had conversations, coffees is what they call them. Family, friends, people I had worked with before, wives, husbands, uncles of anyone within my sphere. And then I bumped into a close friend of my uncle, who was working with an American software company that had just come into South Africa. And this is the pivotal shifting moment in my career path, because ThoughtWorks was looking to open an African office, but they were explicitly looking for people that didn't come from a software background. Why? Because tech is everywhere. It's touching everything. And the better understanding that the people that build tech have of what problems they're trying to solve, the better the tech. So think about it. If you could give a farmer the power to build the software that manages their farm, the intricacy of their understanding of the farming domain is just superior to Nyari shows up with a computer science degree and says, I'm going to digitize your farm, right? Similarly, if a medical doctor has a crossover understanding into software, their ability to say, okay, when I'm operating as a doctor, here are the areas that I need this to work that way, etc. There's a thing that they can build to that build process that 3 years of computer science and then 2 years of consulting just doesn't quite cut. And so ThoughtWorks was actively looking for people that didn't come from a tech background at a time when I knew I didn't want to be accounting anymore. And so I joined this organization, and it's at the age of 30 that I make this switch. So for the first 10, 11 years of my life, I was an accountant. I wasn't just an accountant, I was an accountant who started at the age of 19. So it's like accounting is all I knew. And the business of accounting is all I knew. And by then I'm a senior manager in accounting, right? So I can sit in rooms and kind of not pay attention for half the meeting and then somewhere at the end come back and wake up and I can follow what's going on. Because for 11 years of my life, this has been my world. Incredibly scary and intimidating to shift over like that, because essentially I'm sitting in rooms and people straight out of university are running circles, zigzag around me. I don't know what they're saying. They're using abbreviations. You know, they use letters and I don't know what the letters are. So my notebooks at that time, you know how they tell you to pay attention and take notes, were more or less transcriptions of every meeting I sat in, because everything that anyone was saying required research after the fact. So at 30 years old in accounting, I was a very young high flyer. At 30 years old, starting in tech, I was a magogo who didn't know what she was doing. And I was a person who was now needing to have the core network of people who I would call my peers, went from the ages of, because if you start when you're 18, 19 and you enter the workplace, you've almost got a 4-year lead time, right? Because in South Africa today, if you wanted to be a chartered accountant, you would go to university, you would do 3 to 4 years in university, you'd come out, then you'd do your articles, then you'd qualify, right? So essentially, when I qualify, I'm like 3-4 years early because I did the two in parallel. So I go from being 30 going on 35 in accounting to 30 going on 21 in tech, which is like, who am I? I was the boss. People worried if my coffee was hot. People got intimidated about submitting documents to me. And here I am the most clueless, least knowledgeable human being in any room I walk into. And I share that story with you. It will lead into my discussion about AI, but to try and encourage something around competence and talent, right? I led a tech academy for 7 years, vacated the seat of CEO in December last year at WeThinkCode. And WeThinkCode recruits between the ages of 17 and 35, which means you see different people. You see people coming straight out of matric. You see people that have gone and done a career. They were pilots, they were bakers, they were young women that got pregnant young and then didn't get to university and came back. You had people who had dropped out of one thing or another. You had people that had worked in retail. Essentially, think melting pot of background coming together. The key thing is that every one of those people is trying to chart a path of what is relevant and what is useful for them. And when we are younger, at least when I was younger, my sense of that path was you go to school, you study. My mother used to say, if you want to pass exams, write correct things. So you study, you try to make sure you understand what the syllabus says you should know. You arrive at exam day with as much of that knowledge in your head as possible. You download it into an exam. Your capacity to memorize, recall, put it down on paper is evaluated, and success is you got 90%, right? So you've got mastery. And so we get acquainted with this path in life and validation of who we are that's about mastery and blowing the lights out, which is the opposite of what life is. Life just like smacks you on the daily. Anyone who's in here busy with adulting, you arrive and you're like, what are even the rules here? What is this game? What does success look like? I feel like I'm failing, but they didn't even tell me what success is, right? So that's life. So it's almost like you're primed for the opposite of what life is. And in my career journey, that first piece, I crushed it, right? I didn't just do management accounting. I had, they say Zimbabweans are smart. I was the highest rated management accounting student in the year that I did it. I didn't just write my board exams. In my first part of my board exams, I was the 4th highest ranked in all of Zimbabwe in that board exam. So as it relates to that criteria of competence, I was killing it. Then in this area that I was killing it, 11 years track record under the belt across Harare, New York, Dar es Salaam. I'm like bawling, like respect, right? Just like, and And then I enter into a room and a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old is like saying things and drawing things on a board. And I am like, sorry, what? In English, please. Like, was that Afrikaans? Was that Zulu? Because I speak none of these languages. And it turns out it's English, and I'm just clueless. But what it was in that moment was, what ThoughtWorks was looking for was people who understood business. And as a person with an 11-year career, going from a sugarcane farm to a hotel, to a bank, to a school, auditing all these different, I was a domain expert in that way. But to access this other opportunity that was technology, I needed to put down all my little accolades and my certificates and lots of ego over there and say, yes, to the 21-year-old graduate, I'm a 30-year-old old woman who knows nothing. But to the trajectory of Nyari's life, I've now got one bag of tricks that I can augment with other bags of tricks, that I can augment with other experiences, that I can combine and then build a career of significance. Because you start to realize that education and stature are necessary, but they are not sufficient for significance. So if you don't have any skill and any competence, you can't be significant, right? But having that alone doesn't get you anywhere. That's one. The other is fulfillment. I was sitting in rooms at yet another balance sheet and yet another P&L, and I cannot tell you how much I just didn't care. Like I just didn't. I was unmoved, like as far as unmoved can be. And this career is demanding. Like the pressure's on, the deadlines are on, there's a lot of work to do. And I don't know if any of you have ever woken up in the morning with this much to do that you care this much about. It's like an immovable force, an unstoppable force hits an immovable object. It's the ultimate emotional collision of two identities. One is like, I have integrity, I show up at work and I do my job. The other one's like, oh God, not again. And so it was this crazy conflict. But the resolution to the conflict was I had to slow down to speed up. I had to go back to move forward. I don't know if in the plenary session, one of the ladies on the panel was talking about when you're summiting mountains, they literally go up to a certain base level and then they come back down so that your body acclimates to what is there. And the question in that moment is, what is your identity? Are you a CA, senior manager, accountant? Is that who you are? Because if that's who you are, that's it. That's all you can be. So you stay at Deloitte, you wake up every morning, you box yourself to get out of bed, and then you pray to God that you're not missing obvious things because you're reading an entire page. 20 minutes later, if you ask me what's on the page, I don't remember. Why? Because I don't care. So I'm not trying to remember. And my body has stopped pretending to be interested. So I moved into a world of tech. And when I moved into the world of tech, intimidating, overwhelming, talk about learning curve. I'm at ground zero now. I must understand what is a balance sheet. Sorry, what is a database? So I'm thinking, I know balance sheets, I know trial balances, I know P&L, I know cash flow statements, I can consolidate them in different currencies across different industry segments, I can do all that. Now I need to understand what is a database, what is the front end, what is the back end, what is the server side, what is a user, what is an interface, what is the integration. I had to start to learn these things. And in that intimidation and in that stress, something shifted in me, which was excitement. I was learning again. I was curious again. I went from sitting in meetings where I understood everything and couldn't care to listen, to meetings where I understood nothing and was desperate to get it all in so that I could read it again later. So I was basically working 16-hour days, 8 hours of being in the room, not knowing what happened, and then 8 hours of retrospecting on what I didn't know and trying to find out what it is, right? And it's probably at about the 8 months to 1 year mark when it clicks, where I go from just scrambling to keep up with what all these techies are doing to the first time when my old brain of competencies, I knew enough about tech that my old brain of competencies could come with me. That I could sit in a room with technologists, and I remember a moment when we were building a solution for KFC. And the other members of my team had come up with this really cool app for KFC. And the accountant in me rose up and said, well, how many more chickens will they sell? Because these guys sell chicken. And so you can build them a sexy, fancy app with AI and bells and whistles, But as a business, KFC sells chicken. So value to a business that sells chicken is going to be around their customers that eat chicken, their customers that buy chicken, their workers who grow chickens, their workers who cook chickens. So they're in the chicken business. And tech is not the business. It is the enabler of the chicken business to go far. And who understood business? She's back. She's back. She can now talk to you about when we're building the technology, what is the superpower of the technology? What is the superpower of the software? What is the superpower of an app? Well, I can tell you now. An app means that I don't need to see you or know you to bring my product into your hands. I don't need to be next to you for you to see what I'm doing. I don't have to speak the language you speak for me to be able to convey a message to you. That is the power of the technology. Only useful if that technology can translate to my chicken business doing better. And so I become a person on a software team that can challenge whether you understand what the client is trying to do. Yes, you understand how to build a database. Yes, you understand how to integrate Kafka. You understand blockchain better than me. But I understand business better than you. And so we've got an intersection. So now we're sitting at a table that's different, where I am 1 mile deep into business and finance, and maybe 1 inch deep into technology, still digging my way down. And you are 1 mile deep into building software, but 1 inch deep into understanding what the business needs. We need each other, and we intersect. And for many years, that's what technology was. I don't know if any of you have had like these conversations between the business and IT in corporate. You're familiar with those big fights. Yes, because the business wants this, they want features. IT is like, we've got tech debt. We've got a, essentially my job became the translation to the business to say, they're calling it tech debt. What they're saying to you is you're preparing to scale up and reach where you had 1 million users on the app, you're going to 10 million users on the app. The way we scaffolded that technology, it doesn't have the capacity to stay consistent from 1 million to 10 million. When I was studying with UNISA, we all knew the day that results came out that the thing was going to crash. So you had to wake up in the wee hours of the morning to go find out your results because you're anxious to know whether you passed or not. Well, everybody else is too. So you had to be like up, just, you're like refresh. And I'm not going to talk to some of you about dial-up because you're too young to understand what our struggles were. When we think old students complain about the speed of Wi-Fi, I'm like, you have no idea what slow internet is. I could tell you. But essentially, now I can explain to someone at UNISA that what we've got is a problem around latency that's resulting from our inability to balance load of traffic onto the application. So when the tech team is like, we're not going to build another feature because we're addressing tech debt, in English, what they're saying is that we've built a room that can seat 10 people, and we're absolutely anticipating that 1,000 people are coming into this room tomorrow. You need to give us some time to make the room bigger before we start building the next part of this building, right? The translation. Where does the translation come from? The depth of understanding in business and the language of what moves business people. Your customer is coming to the application is going to crash. We need to build more capacity on it. And while it's not visible and shiny as a feature in a meeting, it's integral to the success of your business, yes? I'm going to get to AI, I promise. And so essentially what was happening here was I was starting to realize that spending 11 years of my life across multiple countries through different companies, staring at many different balance sheets, and before my passion ran out, being incredibly diligent about it, suddenly allowed myself to reinvent myself and sit in a new room and be a person who knew things that other people didn't know and be able to contribute there. It made me re-look at what it meant for me, not everybody who's a CA, but for me to be a chartered accountant. It meant that what I valued about chartered accountancy in my life journey was the language it gave me around reasoning with value, reasoning with impact, reasoning with relevance in a business decision, right? So that's what it gives to me. But I don't want to do balance sheets and cash flows. Like even now when our accountant brings them, it's like, oh God, okay. But I don't want to do that, but that was my way in. So you've got to kind of look at your career as a collection of toolboxes, not as stations you arrive at. The way when we were in high school, we went and we wrote the exam and then you got your distinctions and then you were a genius. Well done. But rather as this is a thing that gives me certain tools that go in the box, Some of them are the literal tools of the knowledge I gained. Some of them are peripheral or incidental, things like resilience, like it got hard and I persevered. Things like building relationships. I didn't know what to do and I had to ask somebody who helped me understand how it works, right? So all of those things are tools in a box and tools in a box and tools in a box and tools in a box. The challenge, though, at the time when I joined technology was when I wanted to understand these things, I had to buy books and I had to read the books. And to know which books to buy, it was tricky. I could surf on internet, Google, whatever, ask a friend, etc., etc., etc. We've entered into a world where AI is what I refer to as one of the biggest IP heists in history, right? Everyone who had their special differentiating, take you forward information, all of that IP has been robbed of them and put into a thing that the phone in your hands can access and unlock, right? All the knowledge that when I joined technology, I was fighting to get into my head before I could then bring my 10, 11 years of experience as an accountant, as a business leader, as a person who manages stakeholders, all of those things on those phones in your hands. You no longer need to pay a finance consultant of my expertise to be able to sit there and model as an entrepreneur what the financial model for your business is. You no longer need to pay McKinsey to go and do a route to market strategy for you if you're an entrepreneur. Because guess what? If you were a large organization, you could pay it. If you were an entrepreneur in a small business, you were locked out. It was binary. Now, I know some of my best friends are strategy consultants. Specifically, my sister is one. And she's a highly educated and competent one. And so I understand the big gap between her with AI and me by myself. It's humbling. But the key is that if I couldn't afford her and I couldn't access her, I am at a number greater than 0 in terms of knowledge base. You get? Okay. So what are the implications of this on the African continent? A lot of the conversations we have within our context speak to scarcity, right? I think UNICEF estimates that Africa as a continent, I know sometimes in South Africa you have South Africa and then you go to Africa and I'm like, I don't know where South Africans think Africa is. Yeah, guys, yeah. You heard it from me today. You're among. So they estimate that Africa needs 17 million educators in order to close the education gap, right? If I bring that context back to South Africa, you know those PEARLS tests that tell us, I think it's something like 80% of kids in grade 4 can't read for meaning? Put another way, we've got an illiteracy crisis. We have young kids that are showing up and going to school, and by the time they get to grade 4, they're illiterate. What is the implication? That means everything else we're claiming to be teaching them thereafter, they're not internalizing because we failed to get the literacy done, right? And if you look at the UNICEF study, what are they saying? Get us 17 million people, put them in the room and get them to teach these young people to read. There was a few years ago, they did a test of mathematics. I think it was again around grade 4, grade 5. And they were testing in schools that are under-resourced. The teachers were scoring weaker than grade 4 kids in certain private schools. So the person tasked with imparting the knowledge is underperforming compared to that age group that they're supposed to be lifting up. And the solution 5 years ago would have been 17 million humans deployed across the continent of Africa. Just want you to sit with that for a moment. Then came this IP heist. What did we do with the IP heist? If you were running your business on building textbooks that an African child needed to wait to have that book bought, put on a truck, sent to Limpopo, handed to a teacher who stood in front of you and was the means of instruction, the number of things in that value chain that could go wrong and did go wrong and did prevent that child from studying, immense. Today, AI. AI in WhatsApp. And so in Kenya, they're essentially bringing young kids and having them learn to read on WhatsApp by themselves, right? So let me take this heist a step further. I spend way too much of my life watching sport, too much. Like, it's embarrassing how much trivia my little head is full of. Football, rugby, cricket, swimming, athletics, gymnastics, ask me, it's embarrassing. But notice how when I was leaving Deloitte, I'm sitting in a room and you couldn't get me to pay attention. Just put Lionel Messi's face on that balance sheet and I would have sat up. Just give Serena Williams a tennis racket, put her in the room, and I'm like, yo, what's up? What are we talking about, right? What is that? Personalization at scale, possible with AI to drive education and enable us to find out, A, what is the pace of your learning? 2, what is the method by which you internalize information? C, what holds your attention? Instead of deploying 17 million humans with 17 million textbooks into 17 million classrooms across the continent, we have AI, right? And this is where the question of Africa then comes into play. I think they're estimating that by 2040 or something, half of the world's youth are going to be on the continent. Y'all, not me, you. I've aged out of that bracket. You are at the age we deem to be the most productive, right? You have the energy that I can tell you now I don't have, right? You're at that point of the curiosity and the drive and what have you, and you literally have at your fingertips the biggest IP heist that the world has ever seen, so that your ideas that couldn't be honed by a strategy consultant from McKinsey because you couldn't afford them can be honed if you should choose to be diligent. So that the translation you needed me to do at KFC around what is technology into what is the solution, who's heard of Lovable? So Lovable is, who's heard of vibe coding? So vibe coding is essentially where you code in English. You instruct the computer in English to build you a website. And the computer takes your English instruction and creates a website. You now don't need to be able to program. So I was sitting with a very successful entrepreneur friend of mine just this past week. And he's building a new CRM, and he's going after Zoho, and what's the other one? Salesforce. He's going after them. And he's building this solution for SMEs. And he was saying, he's sitting up at night building this thing on Lovable, and then he's giving his dev team, where before he had to try and explain, it needs to do this, it needs to do that, it needs to do that. He knows that what he's building on Lovable is not production ready. If he deployed it, it would crash, which is what all the engineers are telling you. We're telling you, you still need us. You're not getting rid of us yet. But the gap between the engineer's knowledge and the entrepreneur's knowledge is shrinking. So he can use this to give a pretty advanced instruction to a software engineer to say, build this for me. And he can quite competently test if they're building the right thing. Those days of tech people telling you the budget overrun, the whatever. No more that. But the question remains the question that's always been there. How hard are you willing to work? How much do you want it? Right? In the earlier session, we were in here with Charmaine. Charmaine is like, that woman has saved my life. I don't know how many times. Like, it's crazy. When she gets to the pearly gates, just on her rap sheet of saving my life alone, she's getting in. And yet there are many people that she has done that for. But essentially, she was talking about something which speaks to the hunger and the drive. When we look at this moment with AI, Africa has a few things. We've got a youthful population. So these are young people who are not at the point where you just start nodding off at 3 p.m. for no reason. It's old age. Just forgive us. We've been in these streets for a while. We're worse for wear. So you're at that age, right, where you've got the drive. And I work with young people on purpose because they outrun me. And I'm grateful. I'm like, yes, go, faster, go, Shakari, crash the record. You're at that age at the same time that global populations are struggling with aging. So populations in Asia, populations in Europe are not replacing themselves. They're not just aging, they're not replacing themselves, right? So essentially their populations are getting smaller. They still have needs. Not only do they have shortage of talented people, they just have a shortage of people in J. And the people are here, holding in their hand the biggest IP heist in history. That's what AI is. So you can stop wasting time with this, oh, AI is going to take my job. Oh, no, your job will be taken by the person who uses AI. Like, What do we say? I'm bored. That's the English. I'm bored. I'm acclimating. I'm bored. That's not the question. The question is, how do you use your context and your experience to start to design solutions that are useful? Because you can. Because you can. And when I talk to folks that we think of, I often refer to the Operation Olympics. Have you guys heard of has anyone been to the Operation Olympics? You haven't been? Has anyone heard of the Olympics in general? Yeah. Elite athletes go to the Olympics. So if you come last in the finals of the 100 meters at the Olympics, you're the 8th fastest person likely in the world who ran that 100 meters. So it's a competition among the best that ever did it. That's the Olympics. The Operation Olympics. Let me give you my Operation Olympics story. Okay, it's so hard, guys. I'm a black woman. I'm not just a black woman. I'm an immigrant. Oh, my goodness. And my grandmother was a maid. My mom was pregnant at 18. I was raised by a single mom. And, my father, well, I don't know. Watch The Polygamist. Might keep... Because of all of these compounding problems, how can I, where can I, when will I, right? Operation Olympics. Guess what I can't do at the same time that I'm doing that? I'm not creating nothing. I'm not progressing to nowhere. I'm not dreaming. And even when I stop complaining, where's my energy? Check your mood. Right? And so there's a reality that's an unfortunate one. But now that I've been around for even over the 4-decade mark, I'm tilting to the other side. Now that I've been around for a while, there's something that I realize, which is it's not that we're not victims. It's not that we haven't been harmed. It's the hard truth that, especially because you're a victim, you unfairly are burdened with the responsibility of rising above the moment. Otherwise, the moment will define you. U2 has a line in one of their songs, choose your enemies carefully. Choose your enemies carefully. I mean, we all know about choosing our friends. Choose your enemies carefully, because in some ways they will define you. So that person who has you sitting there talking about, whining about, complaining about, guess where you aren't? Guess which race you're not in? The one that's moving forward. Because you're stuck. You're stuck. Because you've chosen the enemy, the place where your energy is going to be concentrated and focused. You've chosen that it be in what Charmaine was calling nonsense. Stop the nonsense, she said. And so, yes, all of those realities about your oppression are real. And as my family likes to say, I was an activist for a hot minute. And I've been in marches in the street. That's when my friends had to be activated in my family, because they were like, where's this nigga? Like, she's just out in the streets. But at the same time that I have the activism, I've got to carry a view to progress, right? And my passion around We Think Code specifically, and around tech education in particular, and around, previously it was like, oh, let's train people to be software engineers. AI has changed my mind. It's not just the software engineers. Next time I stand in a room and I'm like, what's lovable? All hands up. Why? Because this thing changes literally everything. I was writing a proposal yesterday and I was getting stuck. So I told you about my genius sister earlier. So she had reviewed it and she's like, oh no, your concept is solid, but it's written in very modest language, like you're apologizing at every turn, at every corner, every sentence. She's like, please possibly consider giving me a chance. She's like, you need to back yourself. You need to put your track record out there. So I'm trying. I'm like, oh, okay, I get stuck. So I take this damn proposal and I put it into Claude AI. And I was like, Claude AI, if Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, or Elon Musk was pitching this pitch, how would they position themselves? And it came back at me, boom, sounding like an overconfident white man. Just like that. Biggest IP heist. So the African girl who's like raised to be demure and look down and not be too much, even though I try to have energy, invariably, when I write a proposal, I over-explain, I over-justify, I'm preempting all the ways you're ready to say no. And so what could be said in a page, I'm at page 5 and I'm still fighting demons. And I was like, what would these boys have said? And it was like, wow, oh, this is a flywheel effect. It's like, oh, this leads to that, leads to that, leads to that, boom. Like, why wouldn't you? We're making solar obsolete. We're revolutionizing the whole thing. And it might sound petty or whatever, but even when I read that same proposal in this, I was like, I would back this one and not the other one. And understand something there. Who was in my way? Me? Where does it come from? It comes from a culture I value and pride. And there are many situations that I'm not trying to sound like Elon Musk at all. Most situations, in fact, I'm not trying to sound like Elon Musk at all. But here I'm asking people for money. So I'm trying to sound like a person who succinctly, confidently can get to the point of proving to you that I am the right person to trust because I get it, I've done it before, and I'm a safe pair of hands. And even when he's doing nonsense, he uses that voice. Now, the biggest IP heist, I'm like, give me that crazy man's voice for a minute. And then give it back to him afterwards because I want to be myself. You follow? And so with AI, to me, Africans have always been innovative. I remember being in Germany. So I had lived in Dar es Salaam. And so I encountered mobile money, M-Pesa, very early days. And it's probably a year from then I'm in Germany. And if you were in South Africa at that time, I don't think mobile money had quite taken off, but definitely EFTs had. In Germany, they wanted cash. Cash money out of a wallet. Like, how many of you carry cash? And if you're carrying cash, you're going to a place where there's a particular thing that you need to pay for that is cash. It's a sum certain for a taxi. You're not just, you don't transact your lives in cash. Germany was doing that. Why? Because they could. Because their bank network, their ATM network, their ecosystem, this was not a problem that was real for them. They didn't need to solve for it, so they didn't. In Kenya, however, you've got a rurally spread out population of people. The cost of setting up bank branches and ATMs, moving cash up and down, securing that cash, and enabling commerce to happen was a barrier. It made it impossible. You were not going to bank everybody in East Africa using banks, branches, ATMs. It was impossible. So they had to come up with a way. So they innovate because who's the mother of invention? Necessity. They needed a way to transact, so they came up with a solution. But guess what? Then you go back to Germany. And the same cost of setting up branches and ATMs applies in Germany. So mobile money is an optimization there too. Somebody tell me scale. Because now you've built a solution that's relevant here because you've got real problems, not first world ones, real ones. Like literally my gogo can't transact if we don't figure out how to put money on a phone, right? So you solve for that, and the thing you use to solve for that becomes relevant in other markets because it is still a solution to a problem that's reducing friction, and consequently, as an accountant, I can tell you there's value in that. I'm still, I dabble. And so essentially, to me, all the struggles that make you African, you can pack them in a duffel bag and head to the Oppression Olympics. You might even win there. I don't know if the medals are gold. Or if that will be the next complaint. It's like, I even won at the Oppression Olympics and they didn't have gold medals. They gave me brass. But I'm the best. Or you can take your duffel bag of problems and then you can take the IP heist that's in your hands. And then you can be obsessive, pedantic, and hungry. Your choice, same life. You know how they talk about fear and faith? Both of them require you to believe in something that hasn't happened. So you choose. Do you want to believe in the fear? Meditate on disaster. Woe is me, it's going to be bad, it's going to be worse, it's going to be terrible. Or it's bad, what are the ways out? And so I think for me, when I look at the moment in AI, as an African child, you must be optimistic. Yeah. Because the barriers to accessing knowledge were yours to bear. You are the one who didn't have textbooks at a school. You are the one who had a child who needed to be taught by a teacher who themselves didn't have the knowledge. You are the entrepreneur who didn't grow up in a household with parents who had university degrees and corporate jobs to teach you how business works. All of those things were legitimate competence barriers that made it impossible for you to summit and get to where you needed to get to. The IP heist, guys, my goodness, it's like reverse slavery. You know how they came here and they took our things? Now those things, they're there on the LLM, they're there. Are you gonna go fetch them? Or are you at the Oppression Olympics? 100 meters of complaining. And so that's what I came to. I told you I'll get to AI at the end. I did, right? I got there. I want you to think about AI as your personal tutor, your personal assistant, your honest memory, your critique, your leverage, your builder. That's how I want you to think about AI. Don't do the same silly things we do with social media, the most interconnected, what, and what do you use it to do? To shout at people we don't know using derogatory language. It's like, what on earth is going on with this Twitter thing? Oh, it's not Twitter anymore, it's X. See, my guy, Elon Musk, he's back. Complicated relationship we have, him and I. But essentially what I'm saying to you is, you have an opportunity now, as entrepreneurs, as professionals in corporate, as parents, as aunties, as friends, to access a body of knowledge that's infinite. And your capacity to take things out of it is a question of your obsessiveness, your hunger, your commitment, your willingness to sit down and say, it's our turn to do reverse slavery. We're going to take that information that was yours and yours alone, that was in those books you didn't want us to read, that was in those classrooms you didn't let us go to, that was in those cities we couldn't get visas for. We're now going to take that thing and we're going to create. And we're going to create solutions out of the struggles, because we create frugal solutions because we just don't have the money. We just don't have the data. We just don't have the time. And we're going to create these frugal solutions, and then everyone in the world is going to look at them and respect them as has happened before, and then we're going to take it from there. And so AI was never about computers, because computers were never the business. The business was humans with problems that needed solutions, and people motivated to create those solutions, to trust their ideas when they were like, I don't know if it's going to work, and to push through and get to the other side and create. You've got one job: take over the world. I'm an avid reader. I am pedantic and controlling by nature. And anyone who has worked with me will tell you these things. I'm a chartered accountant. So I think for me, the way I work with AI is I take responsibility for outcomes. I'm an outcomes-driven person. So there's an outcome that's success. And I see myself as the conductor whose job it is to lead, whether it's a team of human beings or it's me and the computer, to a successful outcome. And I define that for myself. And so my interaction with AI is constantly about getting it to hit the mark on what I want. So I'll rarely ever go to AI and be like, oh, I'm going to the Lincoln Mali Youth Summit. What should I say? I'm more likely to say, I want to talk about AI, but I want to talk about it as a human story. And here's my perspective on it. And then there'll be a brain dump that's not necessarily organized. And so suddenly from there, I'm the conductor and I'm in control. And then it's like, is that my voice? Is it? And that's how I safeguard against that, which is I'm still the one who's generating the starting point, and I'm still the one who's defining what success is. So my poor AI gets smacked so bad because it's not a human, so I can just tell it, rubbish, start again. One, priorities. I was unhappy. And I was 30, and I was like, minimum life expectancy 65. And I was like, I can't do this for another 30 years. Put quite simply, right? Like it just, and the priority for me was like a motivator, is I'm failing myself if and it speaks to the severity of my displeasure, which wouldn't be everybody else's severity. And I'm very much do as much as I can. There's so much in life you don't control. The few things that you do control them. And then there's always a price to pay. Pay cuts, my income, like I was 6 figures in the US. When I came to South Africa, I was 6 figures in rands. Right, so it was not, I paid a price financially, but my priority, it was clear what I wanted. And then in terms of how to move, start. Like find the smallest thing that you can do that is a tangible step. And then surround yourself with like-minded people. If you're thinking entrepreneurially, don't keep going hanging out with your lawyer friends that love the law firm. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just not the tribe that has the energy or is moving into the opportunities that take you to where you want to go. So I had to let go of my accounting friends who had aspirations to be partner for a minute there and hang out with people that were kind of my kind of chaos monkey crowd. And then now I can talk to my accountant friends because it's safe again. But at that time, the things that they valued were misaligned, not malicious, but just misaligned. So priorities, what really is important to you. There's a price, be willing to pay it, and then move, act. and then it'll take care of itself from there. I'll be really quick with you. That in my mind, there are two things. One is around mentality. Scarcity mentality will kill you 100% of times. Usually when we're fighting over the crumbs, right? I'm Zimbabwean, I shared that right at the beginning. There's Zimbabweans that will be working in restaurants and earning a pittance of a wage. And they are foreign nationals, and they may be pushing someone out of a job. Do you know who else is pushing someone out of a job? Microsoft. The most of South Africa's wealth is not going to the Zimbabwean restaurateur waiter. It's going to the IT you're sending offshore. So when your mentality is a scarce mentality, you fight over the little. When your mentality is expansive, you push for the more. You're like, I'm going to build a thing, like my friend, which is going to replace Salesforce. America's going to buy an African CRM instead of the other way around. So that's the one. And then there was, what did I say? So I spoke about the mentality is the one. The second one is just trusting ourselves. You know, when you travel overseas, you'll be in a village in Italy or somewhere in Europe, the way they are proud of their food. As Africans, sometimes we feel like to make it is to just eat pasta now. You get what I mean? So you've got to value it. If you want to market and push it, you've got to feel like it's worth holding on to. And if you don't have that mentality, you're constantly trading it. You're trading your birthright for lentil soup. And you've got to make the decision not to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for today. We appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.